The diplomatic vessel moved through the darkness of space like a silver needle threading through black fabric. Inside the ship called Harmony's Gate, Captain Hana Kang stood at the observation window and watched the massive space station grow larger ahead of them. Council Station Primus was the heart of galactic politics, a place where hundreds of alien species gathered to talk instead of fight. At least that was the idea. Hana touched the white bandages wrapped around her left arm. The fabric felt rough under her fingers. She had worn these bandages for 3 years now, never taking them off in public. Beneath the white cloth lay secrets that could start a war or prevent one. She was not sure which yet. Behind her, Ambassador Taeyang Park paced back and forth across the bridge. He was young for an ambassador, barely 40 years old, with nervous energy that made him move constantly. This was his first major diplomatic mission, and the weight of it showed in every step he took. "Do you think they will listen to us?" Taeyang asked for the 3rd time that hour. Hana turned from the window. "Some will listen. Some will not. That is how politics works. But we have legitimate claims to those colonies. 15 million humans live in the Outer Rim territories. We cannot just abandon them." "We will not abandon anyone," Hana said firmly. Her voice carried the certainty of someone who had seen real war and survived it. "That is why we are here." Lieutenant Daehyun Lee looked up from his console. He was the youngest officer on the bridge, eager and bright-eyed. "Captain, we are receiving docking clearance." "Bay 17. Take us in, Lieutenant." The ship glided toward the station's docking bay. Through the windows, Hana could see other vessels from across the galaxy. Ships shaped like flowers, like crystals, like things that had no name in human language. Each one belonged to a different species, each with their own history and agenda. Dr. Minji Choi entered the bridge carrying a medical scanner. She was a small woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You should let me check those bandages before we disembark," she said quietly to Hana. "They are fine." "Hana, you have not let me examine them in weeks." "What if there is an infection?" "There is no infection. The scars healed long ago." Hana kept her voice low so the others would not hear. "You know why I keep them covered." Minji's expression softened. "I know. But hiding them will not make the past disappear." "I am not hiding from the past. I am protecting our future." The ship shuddered slightly as it locked into the docking clamps. Hana straightened her uniform and checked that the bandages were secure. They covered both her arms from wrist to elbow, wrapped around her neck, and disappeared beneath her collar. To anyone who did not know better, they looked like simple medical dressings. But Minji knew the truth. So did a handful of others. The human delegation walked through the station's corridors. Beings of every imaginable shape moved around them. Some walked on legs, others floated, still others rolled or slithered. The air smelled strange, a mixture of 100 different atmospheres and life chemistries all trying to coexist in one space. They entered the Grand Council chamber, a vast room with seats arranged in a circle rising up toward a domed ceiling. Hundreds of delegates filled those seats, representing species from every corner of known space. At the center stood a raised platform where speakers could address the assembly. As the humans took their assigned seats, Hana noticed the Vrellan delegation across the chamber. They were insect-like beings with hard shells and multiple eyes. When they saw her, several of them went completely still. Their antennae twitched rapidly, a sign of agitation in their species. One of the Vrellan, larger than the others and wearing ceremonial armor, stared directly at her bandaged arms. Hana met his gaze without flinching. She recognized him. High Counselor Virex, leader of the Vrellan Dominion. They had never met in person before, but she knew his name. Everyone did. The opening ceremony began. Various counselors gave speeches about peace and cooperation. Hana barely listened. She had heard such words before. Words were easy. Actions were what mattered. When it was time for the human petition, Ambassador Taeyang walked to the central platform. His voice was steady as he spoke. "Honored counselors, humanity comes before you today to request protected status for our Outer Rim colonies. These settlements house 15 million citizens who live peacefully, harming no one. Yet we face constant threats from whom?" Vrex interrupted, rising from his seat. His voice came through a translator device, giving it a metallic edge. "The honored ambassador speaks of threats but names no enemy. Perhaps because no enemy exists?" Taeyang faltered for a moment. "The Vrellan Dominion has been conducting aggressive operations near our territories. Mining operations that cut off our supply lines. Survey missions that Legitimate activities in unclaimed space, Rex said smoothly. If humans choose to place their colonies in inconvenient locations, that is not our concern. Perhaps you should reconsider your expansion plans. Those territories were claimed legally under Council Charter guidelines, Taeyang argued. Rex's eyes shifted to Hana. Perhaps the ambassador should ask his military captain about aggressive behavior. Captain Kang, is it? Tell us what lies beneath those bandages of yours. The chamber went silent. Every delegate turned to look at Hana. She stood slowly. Medical dressings. Nothing more. Medical dressings that you have worn for 3 years? Rex's mandibles clicked together in what might have been a laugh. How curious. I propose that Captain Kang remove these dressings. Let the council see what kind of injuries require such prolonged treatment, or perhaps they hide something else entirely. Ambassador Taeyang's face flushed with anger. That is a violation of personal dignity. The captain's medical condition is private, yet she wears these bandages to a diplomatic function, Rex countered. If they are simply medical, there should be no issue with transparency. Unless humanity has something to hide? Other delegates began murmuring. Some seemed curious, others uncomfortable with Rex's aggressive questioning. Hana could see the trap forming. If she refused, it would look suspicious. If she agreed, she would be playing into Rex's hands. A new voice entered the discussion. It came from the Solvath section, where aquatic beings floated in specialized water-filled chambers. This is inappropriate, said Councillor Mahina, an elderly Solvath with pale, luminous skin. We do not demand physical examinations of delegates. I demand nothing, Rex said. I merely suggest that humans who request protected status should demonstrate they have nothing to hide. Trust must be earned. Hana felt Minji's hand briefly touch her shoulder in silent support. Daehyun looked ready to jump to his feet. Taeyang stood at the central platform, unsure how to respond. Before anyone could speak further, Rex continued. But perhaps we are being hasty. Let us table this discussion and reconvene tomorrow. It will give our human friends time to consider what transparency means to them. The session ended in confusion. As delegates filed out, Hana noticed Rex watching her with those unblinking insect eyes. He knew something. The question was, how much? That night, Hana returned to her quarters on the ship. The room was small and sparse, containing only a bed, desk, and personal locker. She sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed herself to feel the exhaustion that came from maintaining her composure all day. A soft chime indicated someone at her door. Come in, she said. Minji entered carrying a bottle and 2 glasses. You look like you need this. I need to think clearly. Then you definitely need this. Minji poured a small amount of amber liquid into each glass. It is from Earth. Real whiskey, not the synthetic stuff. They drank in silence for a moment. Then Minji said quietly, he knows, does not he? Rex knows what the bandages hide. He suspects, or he remembers. Hana set down her glass. 3 years ago, the Vrelin learned something about humans. Something that scared them. They thought they could make it disappear by erasing the evidence. But I am still here. You could tell the council the truth. And say what? That the Vrelin are monsters? They will call me a liar. That humans are dangerous? They will call me proof of their point. Hana shook her head. The truth is complicated. Rex is trying to make it simple. Later, after Minji left, Hana prepared for bed. She removed her uniform and stood before the small mirror in her quarters. Slowly, carefully, she unwrapped the bandages from her left arm. The scars beneath were not random. They formed patterns, symbols, writing. In the Vrelin language, they spelled out coordinates and dates, military positions, attack plans, information that had been carved into her skin with deliberate precision. She had been marked for death but turned the markings into intelligence. Now those same scars might determine the fate of millions. As she rewrapped the bandages, a chime from her desk console made her turn. A data chip sat on her keyboard, one that had not been there when she entered the room. Hana picked it up with steady hands despite the racing of her heart. Someone had been in her quarters. Someone had left her a message. She inserted the chip into her console. A video file began playing. It showed footage from 3 years ago. Footage of her last battle. Footage that was supposed to be classified forever. The video showed her fighting through a Vrelin ship, blood streaming from dozens of cuts. It showed her. Hana did not sleep that night. She sat at her desk and stared at the frozen image on her screen. The video showed a moment 3 years ago when her life changed forever. When humanity learned exactly what kind of universe they had joined. 3 years earlier, Hana had been commander of the Colony Defense Force on Kolrath 7. It was a small settlement on the edge of human space, home to 30,000 miners and farmers. The planet was harsh but livable, with red soil and thin air that required masks outside the habitation domes. The trouble started when Vrellan ships appeared in the asteroid belt above the planet. They claimed to have legal mining rights to the asteroids, which was technically true according to Council law. The asteroids had been there first before humans arrived. The Vrellan began operations immediately. Within weeks, their mining blocked the supply routes. Ships carrying food and medicine could not reach Kolrath 7 safely. The Vrellan said it was unfortunate but unavoidable. Their mining operations were too extensive to pause. Hana filed complaints with the Council. She sent messages requesting intervention. The response was always the same. The Vrellan had legal rights. The humans should have checked for existing claims before colonizing. Empty words that did nothing to feed hungry children or treat sick colonists. After 2 months, the colony had supplies for only 30 more days. The colonists started rationing food. Children cried from hunger. The medical center ran out of basic medicines. And still the Council debated and discussed and did nothing useful. Hana made a decision. If the Council would not help, she would help herself. She took 5 ships and 15 soldiers, all volunteers. They flew into the asteroid belt at night when Vrellan sensors were weakest. The plan was simple. Sabotage enough mining equipment to force the Vrellan to pull back temporarily, giving supply ships a clear path. It should have been quick and quiet. They landed on the largest mining asteroid, disabled the automated equipment, and prepared to leave. That was when Hana found the hidden facility. Behind a fake rock wall accessible only through a concealed airlock was a Vrellan research station. Inside that station were 17 human miners who had gone missing over the past month. The Vrellan had not killed them. What they did was worse. The miners were alive but restrained, connected to monitoring equipment. Vrellan scientists were conducting experiments, pain tolerance tests, injury response studies. They were torturing humans to gather data about human physiology. Hana's tactical officer, a woman named Yunji, vomited inside her helmet when they saw it. One of the miners, a man named Gideon, looked at Hana with eyes that had seen too much suffering. He whispered through cracked lips, "Please. End it." Rage was not the right word for what Hana felt. Rage was too small, too temporary. What burned through her was cold and permanent, a fundamental change in how she understood the universe. These aliens had looked at humans and decided they were things to study, to hurt, to use. She freed the miners and called for immediate extraction. But the Vrellan had detected their presence. Alarms screamed through the facility. Soldiers in powered armor poured through the corridors. The battle was savage and close. Vrellan warriors were strong and fast, bred for combat. They expected humans to break, to surrender when faced with superior force. That was how most species behaved. Humans did not. A Vrellan soldier shot Hana through the shoulder. The pain was incredible, a white-hot spike that made her vision blur, but she did not fall. She grabbed the soldier's weapon with her good hand and pulled him close enough to drive her knife into the gap between his armor plates. The Vrellan made a sound of confusion and fear. Pain was supposed to stop combat. Injury was supposed to end resistance. Why was this human still fighting? Because humans evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. Because pain was just information, not a command. Because 3 years of military training had taught Hana that survival meant fighting through wounds, not stopping because of them. Her team fought their way back to the ships with the rescued miners. But there were too many Vrellan soldiers. The extraction ships launched, carrying most of her people to safety. Hana stayed behind with 3 soldiers to cover the retreat. They almost made it. Almost reached the last ship. Then a Vrellan plasma grenade detonated near Hana, and the world turned into fire and darkness. She woke up in a cell. Her armor was gone. Her weapons were gone. Her right arm was broken. Her ribs cracked, and dozens of smaller cuts covered her body. She could feel every injury with perfect clarity. A Vrellan in scientist robes entered her cell. He looked at her with those insect eyes that showed no emotion humans could read. Through a translator, he said, "You destroyed valuable research. You killed 17 of our soldiers. This cannot be forgiven." You were torturing my people, Hana said through split lips. We were studying them. They are primitives. Newcomers to the galaxy. They should be grateful we take interest in their biology. Let me go and I will show you what this primitive can do. The scientist made a clicking sound, defiant even when defeated. Interesting. Your species has potential, I think, but you need to learn your place. Over the next 2 weeks, they carved symbols into her skin, not random cuts, but deliberate writing in Vrellan script. They used something like a laser scalpel, precise and agonizing. Each symbol burned itself into her flesh while Vrellan scientists watched and recorded her reactions. They thought they were documenting a primitive, creating a living record of their superiority. The scars would mark her as studied, classified, archived. But Hana was not screaming mindlessly. She was paying attention. The cell had a small computer terminal the Vrellan used to record their research. Between torture sessions, Hana studied the screen. The Vrellan thought she was too injured and primitive to understand their language. They were wrong. Hana had always been good with languages. The military had trained her in basic Vrellan, because they were a major power in the galaxy. Now, with nothing to do but heal and watch, she began to understand the symbols being carved into her skin. They were not just marking her as a research subject, they were writing military intelligence on her body. Coordinates of human colonies, dates of planned attacks, strategic assessments of human defensive capabilities. The Vrellan were using her as a living document, never imagining she could read their script. On the 14th day, a new prisoner arrived. Gideon, the miner she had rescued. The Vrellan had recaptured him. He looked at Hana and started to cry. I am sorry, he said. They caught me when the ship stopped for repairs. I tried to fight, but you survived, Hana interrupted. That is what matters. That night she told Gideon what she had learned. The symbols on her skin spelled out an invasion plan. 6 human colonies would be hit simultaneously in 3 months. The Vrellan wanted to crush humanity's expansion before humans became strong enough to resist. We have to warn them, Gideon whispered. We will, but first we have to get out of here. For the next week they prepared. Hana watched the guard patterns. She studied the lock mechanisms. She exercised as much as her broken body would allow, forcing her muscles to work despite the pain. The escape happened during a shift change. Guards were distracted. Hana picked the electronic lock using a piece of wire she had hidden in her boot. The lock sparked and died. The cell door opened. They moved through the facility like ghosts, found 6 other human prisoners and freed them, stole weapons from an armory, killed 3 Vrellan guards who tried to stop them. Each death was quick and necessary. At the docking bay, they found a small Vrellan courier ship. Hana had watched enough of the facility's computers to know the basic controls. She fired up the engines while Gideon and the others provided covering fire. As they launched, Hana did one final thing. She accessed the facility's communications array and broadcast a message on all Vrellan military frequencies. The message was simple: a video of her scars, every symbol visible and clear, along with text in Vrellan script that read, We know your plans. We decoded your coordinates. We are ready. Come if you dare. The ship jumped into hyperspace. Behind them, alarms screamed across Vrellan military networks. The invasion plans they thought were secret had been compromised. The primitive humans had read their language and stolen their intelligence. The planned invasions never happened. Vrellan fleets withdrew from human space. Officially, this was called a strategic repositioning. Unofficially, the Vrellan had learned that humans were more dangerous than they looked. Hana brought the survivors home. She reported to command. Her story was classified immediately. Too sensitive, too likely to cause diplomatic problems. The military wanted peace with the Vrellan, or at least the absence of open war. Her scars became a secret, hidden beneath bandages and silence. Now 3 years later, sitting in her quarters on Council Station Primus, Hana understood that someone wanted those secrets revealed. The video on her screen proved that someone had access to classified files. Someone knew what happened at Kolrath 7. A knock on her door made her close the video file quickly. Enter. Daehyun stepped inside looking worried. Captain, sorry to disturb you, but sensors picked up unusual ship movements near the station. Vrellan military vessels, more than should be here for a diplomatic mission. Hana felt ice in her stomach. How many? The emergency council session began at dawn station time. The grand chamber filled quickly with delegates who looked worried and confused. Few of them knew why they had been summoned so urgently. Ambassador Taeyang stood at the central platform, his face grim. Beside him stood a man wrapped in medical blankets, his skin pale from blood loss. This was Junho Kim, a farmer from the human colony of New Pyongyang in the Outer Rim. "Honored counselors," Taeyang began, his voice steady despite his obvious anger. "Last night a colony ship arrived here carrying survivors of an attack. Mr. Junho Kim will tell you what happened." Junho stepped forward slowly, pain evident in every movement. He let the blanket fall from his shoulders. Gasps echoed through the chamber. His torso was covered in fresh cuts carved in precise patterns, Freeland script identical to the marks hidden beneath Hana's bandages. "They came 3 days ago," Junho said quietly. "No warning. No demands. Just ships that dropped out of the sky and started taking people. They took my wife, my daughter, 23 others from our settlement." His voice broke. "They brought them back yesterday. All marked like this, all alive but changed. My daughter is 8 years old. She has nightmares now about insect eyes watching her." High Counselor Vrex rose from his seat, mandibles clicking rapidly. "This is a tragic incident, but the Vrellan Dominion has no knowledge of these alleged attacks. Perhaps pirates or rogue elements." "The ships had Vrellan military markings," Junho interrupted. "The soldiers spoke Vrellan. They said they were teaching us our place in the galaxy." "Unverified claims from traumatized witnesses," Vrex said smoothly. "The Council cannot make decisions based on emotional testimony." "Where is the evidence? Where are the ship recordings? The DNA samples?" Taeyang's jaw tightened. "The colony's defensive satellites were disabled before the attack. No recordings survived. As for DNA, Vrellan biology makes such identification difficult without evidence, you mean?" Vrex finished. "How convenient. Humans make accusations but provide no proof." He turned to address the full council. "This is exactly the kind of aggressive behavior we warned about. Humans expand into disputed territories, then cry victim when they face resistance." From the Kareth section, General Thorax stood. He was a massive reptilian being covered in armored scales. High Counselor Vrex makes a fair point. These territories have been contested for decades. Perhaps a compromise would serve all parties better than accusations. "What kind of compromise?" Taeyang asked carefully. "The Vrellan cease all operations near human space. In return, humans withdraw from the Outer Rim territories. The disputed colonies are evacuated, and the region becomes a neutral zone." Silence fell across the chamber. Hana, sitting in the human delegation area, felt her hands curl into fists. This was the trap. Force humans to choose between protecting their people through surrender or standing their ground without council support. Taeyang found his voice. "Those territories house 15 million people. You are asking us to abandon them or force them to leave their homes. Or you can keep them there unprotected while mysterious attacks continue," Thorax said. "The choice is yours." Other counselors began murmuring agreement. It was a reasonable solution, they said. A peaceful compromise, better than risking wider conflict. Hana could see the political calculation happening. The Vrellan Dominion was a major power with vast trade networks. The Kareth Empire controlled the most council votes. Together they could shape any decision. Humans were newcomers with few allies and little influence. In a choice between justice and convenience, the council would choose convenience every time. She stood and walked out of the chamber. No one stopped her. She was just a captain, not a diplomat. Her presence was symbolic anyway. In the corridor outside, she found Daehyun waiting with Minji. "I did some checking," Daehyun said quietly. "Those Vrellan ships around the station? They are not just here. They have been coordinating with Kareth vessels. Joint exercises, they call it. But the formation patterns match pre-invasion positioning. They are planning to attack the station," Hana said flatly. Minji pulled her into a side room where they could talk privately. "Hana, we need to tell the council what is really happening." "About the Kolrath incident. About your scars. They carved military intelligence into your skin, including an attack date. If that date is today..." "If I reveal my scars now, Vrex will twist it," Hana interrupted. "He will say humans mutilate themselves as some primitive ritual. He will use me as proof that we are too barbaric for council protection. And while the council debates human savagery, Vrellan ships will move into attack position. So what do we do?" Hana thought for a moment. "We find allies. There must be some counselors who see through this performance. They found their first ally in an unexpected place. Counselor Mahina of the Sulvath requested a private meeting in her quarters, a specialized chamber filled with water that allowed her aquatic species to breathe comfortably. Mahina floated in her tank, her pale skin glowing softly. When she spoke, her words came through both a translator and something deeper, a telepathic pressure that made Hana's thoughts feel clearer. "The Vrelen fear you," Mahina said without preamble. "Fear you more than any species they have encountered in 5,000 years. We have done nothing to them except defend ourselves. That is precisely why they fear you." Mahina's large eyes blinked slowly. Most species in this council evolved on gentle worlds, stable climates, few predators. When they reached space, they found it matched their expectations. Dangerous, yes, but navigable with caution and planning. Humans are different. Your world tried to kill you from the moment your species learned to walk upright. Ice ages, predators, plagues, volcanoes, floods. Every generation of humanity has faced extinction-level threats. Most species would have died. You adapted instead. Mahina moved closer to the transparent wall of her tank. The Vrelen studied this. They learned that humans feel pain like any species, but your reaction is unique. Pain makes most species retreat. Pain makes humans angry. You fight harder when wounded. Hana remembered the battle 3 years ago, the Vrelen soldiers' confusion when she kept fighting despite her injuries. They wanted to break us, to prove we could be controlled through suffering. And instead they taught themselves to fear you. Because a species that becomes more dangerous when hurt is a species that cannot be conquered through traditional warfare. Then why attack the Council now? If they fear us, why provoke a conflict? Because you are still weak, still new to galactic politics. If they strike now, they can eliminate human leadership and restructure the Council to prevent your species from ever gaining real power. Mahina's telepathic presence intensified. They carved their plans into your flesh, Captain. Did you truly read all the symbols? Hana's hand moved unconsciously to her left shoulder blade. The date of the attack today. Look again. Not just with your eyes, but with your mind. You survived their torture. You decoded their language. But did you understand their true message? Suddenly, Hana realized what she had missed. The symbols on her body were not just coordinates and dates. They were a complete strategic plan, carved across multiple prisoners. Junyo Kim's fresh marks were not random torture. They were the final piece of a puzzle spread across dozens of human captives over 3 years. They have been using us as distributed data storage, Hana whispered. Each prisoner carries part of the invasion plan. Individually, the marks seem random or incomplete. But together they spell out everything. Attack vectors, ship positions, command codes. The Vrelen thought humans were too primitive to compare notes and reconstruct the full message. Minji was already working on her data pad. If we could find the other prisoners, scan their scars, combine the data. There is no time, Hana said. The attack will begin soon. We need to warn the Council now. They will not listen, Mahina said. Vrex has spent years building support. He has convinced most counselors that humans are the real threat. Without proof, they will dismiss your warnings as paranoia. Back in the council chamber, the debate continued. Taiyang was fighting a losing battle. Counselor after counselor spoke in favor of the compromise. Evacuate the outer rim. Accept Vrelen dominance in that sector. Maintain peace at any cost. Junho Kim stood silently through it all, his scars visible to everyone. But the council saw only a wounded man, not the intelligence document he had become. Hana made her decision. She walked to the central platform, interrupting a Karath representative mid-speech. I invoke the right of evidence. The chamber fell silent. The right of evidence was an ancient law, rarely used. Any accused party could present physical proof before a final vote. Vrex's antennae twitched with what might have been amusement. The captain wishes to present evidence? Please enlighten us. Hana began unwrapping the bandages from her left arm. The white cloth fell away slowly, revealing the scars beneath. Gasps echoed through the chamber as delegates saw the Vrelen script carved into her flesh. 3 years ago, I was captured by Vrelen forces during the Kolrath incident, she said clearly. They tortured me, not for information, but to mark me as a research subject. They carved these symbols thinking I was too primitive to understand them. Alarms screamed through Council Station Primus. The massive structure shuddered as emergency shields activated. Through the observation windows, ships could be seen moving into attack formation. 200 Vrellan warships, their hulls glinting in the light of the nearby star. Station Administrator Yuna Shin's voice echoed through every speaker. All delegates proceed to evacuation points. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Panic erupted. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species fled toward the docking bays. Ships launched in chaotic waves, desperate to escape before the Vrellan opened fire. The corridors became rivers of terrified aliens pushing and shoving toward safety. In the council chamber, Ambassador Taeyang made a decision that went against every survival instinct. We stay. Daehyun looked at him in disbelief. Ambassador, the Vrellan fleet will destroy this station. We need to evacuate now. No, we stay and we fight. If we run, the Vrellan will claim we started this conflict and fled. They will hunt down the evacuees and blame humanity for the deaths. Our only chance is to defend this station and prove we are the victims, not the aggressors. Hana understood immediately.
He is right.
If this station falls without a fight, the Vrellan control the narrative. They will reshape galactic politics around our failure to act. But we have no fleet here, Minji protested. Just diplomatic ships. We cannot fight 200 warships. Then we find another way to fight. Hana turned to Daehyun. What assets do we have? Daehyun pulled up tactical displays on his datapad. 47 light patrol craft. 12 heavy frigates. The station's defense grid, which has not been tested in real combat for 300 years. Against 200 Vrellan warships, we will last maybe 10 minutes. Counselor Mahina appeared, her water-filled transport globe floating beside them. The Sulvath offer our 3 ceremonial guardships. They are old but functional. From across the chamber, General Thorax approached. The massive Karath looked troubled. My species made a grave error supporting Vrex. The Karath Empire will not stand by while the Council is destroyed. I offer 6 destroyers currently in this sector. Other counselors began committing their forces. Not many, but more than nothing. Within minutes, Hana had an assembled fleet of 73 vessels, still outnumbered nearly 3 to 1, but at least they could make a fight of it. We need a unified command structure, Taeyang said. Council protocols have no provision for this situation. We need someone who knows combat, not politics. He looked directly at Hana. Captain Kang, I am using my authority as representative of an embattled member species to invoke Emergency Protocol 7. I nominate you as Supreme Commander of Station Defense. Several delegates started to protest, but General Thorax cut through the objections. She fought the Vrellan and won 3 years ago. She decoded their battle plans carved into her own flesh. Unless someone else wants to volunteer their credentials, I suggest we listen to the only person here who actually knows how to beat these insects in combat. Hana accepted the role. She had no choice. This was exactly the situation she had trained for her entire military career. Outnumbered, outgunned, survival, depending on creativity rather than firepower. She established a command center in the station's tactical hub and began organizing the defensive fleet. The various species had never worked together in combat. Their ships used different communication protocols, different tactics, different weapons. Turning them into an effective fighting force in minutes was impossible. So Hana did not try. Instead, she embraced the chaos. Human doctrine is built on one principle, she explained to the assembled captains on a secure channel. Adaptability. The Vrellan expect coordinated council tactics. They have studied them for centuries. They know exactly how you will fight, because you always fight the same way. So we will not give them what they expect. She divided the fleet into small independent groups. 3 ships per group, mixed species. Each group got simple objectives. Harass the Vrellan formation, disrupt their attack runs, force them to break concentration. Do not try to destroy them, she instructed. Just annoy them. Make them angry. Keep them off balance. Meanwhile, merchant vessels still in the docking bays received unusual orders. Ambassador Isil Huang, representing the Merchant Guild, appeared on the command channel with 16 armed freighters. We are not warships, she said bluntly. But we have been defending cargo runs from pirates for decades. Tell us what you need, Hana explained her plan. The freighters would pretend to evacuate, loading their cargo bays with containers. But those containers would not hold supplies. They would hold improvised mines built from the station's maintenance equipment. As the freighters fled, they would drop their deadly cargo across the Vrellan approach vectors. It is a pirate tactic, Isol said with a fierce smile. We know it well. The Vrelen fleet moved closer. Their formation was perfect, a textbook example of overwhelming force. High Counselor Vrex broadcast a message on all frequencies. The Vrelen Dominion protects the Council from human aggression. We will destroy the terrorist elements that threaten galactic peace. Hana's response was broadcast just as widely. You carved your invasion plans into our flesh, thinking we were too primitive to understand. You were wrong then. You are wrong now. The Council knows the truth. And we are not running. The first Vrelen ships opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked toward the station's shields. The ancient defensive grid absorbed the impacts, but Hana could see power readings fluctuating. The shields would not last long. All units execute harassment pattern Alpha, she commanded. The small defensive groups scattered like startled birds. They flew erratic paths, never holding formation long enough for Vrelen targeting computers to predict their movements. They fired quick bursts at Vrelen ships and immediately changed vectors. The Vrelen fleet tried to maintain formation, but the chaos disrupted their coordinated fire. Captains became frustrated, breaking ranks to chase individual targets. The perfect formation began to crack. Meanwhile, the merchant freighters launched in apparent panic. They streamed away from the station, cargo bays leaking containers that looked like abandoned supplies. The Vrelen ignored them, focused on military targets. The containers exploded when Vrelen ships passed nearby. Not huge explosions, but enough to damage shields and sensors. The Vrelen fleet found itself flying through a minefield that had not existed moments before. Damage reports, Hana called. They are taking the bait, Daehyun reported. Vrelen formation coherence down to 60%. 3 ships have collided trying to avoid the debris fields. But the station was taking hits too. Shield generators were failing across multiple sections. Evacuation of non-essential personnel continued, but thousands remained trapped in damaged sections. That was when Junho Kim proved that civilians could be heroes too. Despite his injuries, he joined damage control teams deep in the station's infrastructure. When a Vrelen boarding party breached Section 17, Junho led civilians to safety while buying time for security forces. Hana watched the security feeds as Junho confronted the Vrelen officer leading the boarders. She could not hear the words, but she saw Junho trigger an emergency bulkhead collapse. The section depressurized, killing the boarding party and killing Junho. His final transmission came through broken and faint. My scars told your plans. My death writes your ending. Minji choked back a sob. Taeyang closed his eyes. Hana felt the familiar cold rage settle over her. This was what the Vrelen did. They hurt people and expected them to break. They killed and expected surrender. They had not learned. Humans became more dangerous when wounded. All units pattern shift to Gamma, she commanded. Time to stop harassing and start hunting. The defensive fleet changed tactics. The Wolfpacks became more aggressive, targeting Vrelen ship engines and weapons. The Karath destroyers used their heavy armor to anchor defensive positions while Solvath ships coordinated fleet movements with their superior sensors. The fleeing merchant vessels suddenly reversed course, coming at the Vrelen fleet from behind. They were not heavily armed, but they did not need to be. They just needed to create more chaos, more unpredictability. The Vrelen admiral tried to compensate, committing his elite carrier group to a direct assault on the station. 5 massive carriers surrounded by escort frigates. If they could break through, they would deploy boarding parties and take the station from inside. Hana had been waiting for this move. The Vrelen were predictable when frustrated. They always escalated to overwhelming force. Daehyun now. Lieutenant Commander Daehyun Lee had taken command of a Karath destroyer earlier in the battle. Now he led a group of 15 ships that had evacuated hours before. They had not fled. They had repositioned, jumping to hyperspace and waiting at precise coordinates. They dropped out of hyperspace directly behind the carrier group. The surprise was total. The carriers had deployed all their fighters forward, expecting resistance from the station. Their rear shields were minimal. Daehyun's group struck with everything they had, concentrated fire tearing through carrier hulls. 2 carriers exploded. A third lost main power. The remaining 2 broke formation, scrambling to defend themselves, and then Hana played her final card. 6 months passed after the Battle of Primus Station. The galaxy changed in ways both visible and hidden. Council Station Primus was rebuilt stronger than before. Humanity was given full membership status and a permanent seat on the Security Council. Captain Hana Kang received promotion to Rear Admiral and commanded humanity's first multi-species task force. But peace remained fragile. The mysterious message from the Directorate haunted everyone who knew about it. Ships continued to disappear along the galactic rim, vanishing without distress signals. Some said it was pirates. Others whispered about something worse. Admiral Hana Kang stood in Seoul's reconstructed Peace Square, looking at the memorial for those lost in the Vrelin conflicts. Junho Kim's name was carved there along with hundreds of others. Citizens approached the memorial with flowers and quiet prayers. When they saw Hana, many nodded with respect. Her scars were visible now, uncovered in public for the first time. A young woman approached nervously. "Admiral, I am Bora Kim. Junho Kim was my father." Hana turned to face her. Bora had her father's determined eyes. He was a brave man. He saved many lives. He said the scars you both carried were warnings, that they helped save us all. Bora hesitated. "I enlisted in the fleet. I want to make sure his death meant something." It did. Every day it does. Hana gestured to the memorial. "These names remind us why we fight. Not for glory or conquest, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The quiet moment was interrupted by an urgent transmission. Ambassador Taeyang's face appeared on Hana's wrist device, looking worried. "Admiral, we have a situation. A joint council survey fleet in the Perseus Arm has encountered something unprecedented. You need to see this." Within hours, Hana was aboard the starship Indomitable, humanity's first deep space explorer. The ship was massive, built using combined council technology and human innovation. On the bridge, she found Daehyun studying sensor data with increasing concern. "What are we looking at?" she asked. Daehyun brought up a three-dimensional display. It showed a construct the size of a solar system, orbiting a neutron star. The structure was artificial, clearly built by intelligent beings, but its purpose was unclear. The survey fleet got within sensor range and started experiencing problems. AI systems malfunctioned. Crew members reported shared hallucinations, and then this signal started broadcasting. He played an audio file. The sound was complex, layered with harmonics that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the mind. Hana felt a pressure behind her eyes, like someone watching from inside her own thoughts. "What does it say?" "We are still working on translation." But the survey fleet managed to transmit one phrase before they lost contact. "The architects are testing us." Dr. Minji Choi entered the bridge carrying research files. "I have been reviewing what little we know about ancient civilizations. There are legends among older council species about beings called the architects. They supposedly seeded life across the galaxy millions of years ago. Most species think it is mythology. Apparently mythology just became very real," Hana said. That evening, the council convened an emergency session via holographic link. The architect's message had reached every inhabited system simultaneously. Their words were simple and terrifying. "You are the children of our seeding. We have watched your development with interest and disappointment. Most of you have chosen comfort over growth, stability over challenge. This cannot continue. We will test your worthiness to exist beyond your current limitations. Send representatives to the construct within 1 year, or be reset to begin evolution again." Panic swept through the council. The architect's technology was clearly far beyond anything the galaxy possessed. Resistance seemed futile. Most counselors advocated for diplomacy, appeasement, negotiation. Counselor Mahina, now recovered from her injuries during the battle, brought a different perspective. "My people's ancient records mention the architects. They are not interested in negotiation. They are interested in challenge. Species that hide or beg are found wanting. Species that confront obstacles directly, adapt, and fight for survival earn their respect." "You are saying we should challenge beings who could destroy us with a thought?" another counselor asked incredulously. "I am saying we should not bow down before we understand what they truly want." Ambassador Taeyang stood. "Humanity will go to the construct, not as representatives of humanity alone, but as representatives of all council species who choose to stand up rather than bow down." Hana added her voice. "The architects want to see if we are worthy? Let them see what Earth produces. We evolved in a crucible. Our planet tried to kill us with ice ages, predators, diseases, natural disasters. Every challenge made us stronger. Every scar taught us to adapt. If they want to test us, we are ready." Over the next weeks, Hana assembled a diverse crew for the mission. Daehyun served as tactical officer, Minji as chief science officer. General Thorax volunteered, seeking redemption for his species' initial betrayal during the Vrelin crisis. Counselor Mahina sent her apprentice, a young Solvath named Kelani who possessed strong telepathic abilities. Most surprising was the Vrelin scientist named Rix. He had opposed Rex's policies and now sought to prove his species could change. "What my people did was wrong," he said simply. "Let me help make it right." Representatives from a dozen other species joined as volunteers. They knew the mission might be one way. They came anyway. The journey to the construct took 3 months. During that time, the crew faced numerous trials that seemed designed to test them. Ship systems failed in patterns requiring creative problem-solving. Crew members experienced visions of their species' greatest failures. The route required navigating a nebula that distorted perception and reality. Each challenge brought the diverse crew closer together. Hana's leadership style, learned through pain and survival, helped them adapt. She did not hide her scars anymore. She used them as teaching tools. "Look at these marks," she told the crew during a particularly difficult moment. "The Vrelin carved them thinking they were breaking me. Instead, they gave me intelligence that saved millions. Pain is just information. Suffering is just another challenge. What matters is what you do with it." They arrived at the construct. The structure defied understanding. A massive ring world covered in biomes from thousands of worlds. At its center, a tower reached into space itself, touching dimensions that human science could not explain. The architects spoke, their voices resonating in every mind simultaneously. "You are the ones who mark your failures on your flesh and call them lessons. Show us if you are truly worthy." The crew was separated, each member sent into personalized trials. Daehyun faced scenarios where perfect tactical solutions led to defeat, where only improvisation offered survival. General Thorax confronted his species' obsession with strength by having to succeed through vulnerability and trust. Minji solved problems without tools, using only observation and intuition. Rix, the Vrelin scientist, faced the suffering his species had caused. He experienced the pain of torture victims, felt their fear, lived their trauma. When his trial ended, he emerged changed, understanding finally what his people had done. Hana's trial was different. She found herself in a simulation of the Kolrath incident, reliving every moment. But this time she had power to change history. She could prevent the attack, avoid capture, save everyone. The architects whispered in her mind, "If you prevent your scars, you prevent your lessons. If you avoid your pain, you avoid your growth. Change history and remain weak, or embrace your wounds and become strong." Hana understood. The scars were not just warnings. They were proof of survival. The architects did not respect species that avoided challenges. They respected species that faced them, endured them, and emerged transformed. She let the simulation play out as it originally happened. She experienced every moment of torture again, every cut, every mark, every instant of agony, and when it ended, she stood before the architects not despite her scars, but because of them. The crew reunited at the central tower. The architects manifested as beings of pure energy, older than most stars. "We seed life across the galaxy and watch it develop," they explained. "Most species reach comfort and stop growing. They become stagnant and eventually fade, but occasionally a species emerges that embodies growth through adversity, a species that does not avoid challenges but transforms them into advantages, a species that wears its scars as badges of honor. We have been waiting for humanity, not to reset the galaxy but to push it forward. We offer you a gift, access to the construct, ancient knowledge, the role of catalyst species, those who challenge others to grow." Hana stood before the beings of light and refused. "We do not need your gifts," she said firmly. "We do not need ancient knowledge or special roles. We earned our place in the galaxy by surviving, adapting, never giving up. That is not something you can give us. It is something we already are. We will take one thing, your acknowledgement, not that humanity is special, but that every species has the capacity to grow through challenge. The Vrelin marked us for death and we turned those marks into warnings. Any species can do the same if they choose struggle over comfort.